Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's BRCC webinar. I'm very pleased to have an excellent panel with us today. To introduce myself first, I'm Neil McGregor, the past chairman of the chamber, now vice chair. And one of the things I was dealt with, particularly in my time in the chair, was the COP26 summit on climate change. And we may think that what's happening next door is perhaps more gripping in our attention in what's happening, but it also links into sustainability and climate change. And today is about sustainability and ESG practices for this. Climate action trends. Yes, we're seeing changes in energy use because of the embargoes and restrictions being applied, either through government action or through market trends within the European Union and in the UK and in other countries. But also we're hearing a lot about the rise in the cost of living, with energy bills rising, and therefore anything that makes more efficient use of energy, which is more expensive, must help us to deal with matters of sustainability. I'm very pleased to welcome our three panelists, Alina Tuzma, Alina Vasiliev-Loire, and Frank Hajdiniak. And also we're being moderated today by Katalin Juju. Today we are live on Facebook and we're also recording this. You have questions can be put in the Q&A box on the screen if you are in Zoom. There's also a chat mechanism on Zoom. If you are watching us on Facebook, please put your questions in Facebook. We'll try and monitor those and give those to our panel as well. It's usual for chamber events like this to have a multiple of the number of people who you can see on Zoom joining us on Facebook. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to have you here for such an important subject. Katalin, I shall leave the floor to you as moderator. Have a good and informative webinar.
Thank you for the introduction, Neil. Good morning, everyone. I am Katalin Juju, Sustainable Investments Manager for the London Stock Exchange. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the BRCC for putting together this event and for serving as a platform for insightful discussions on sustainability and ESG. It's a topic of great interest, of pressing need, and one which needs to continue. A bit of ground rules before we get into our presentations today. Each of our three speakers will have about 10 minutes to present their topic. After all three speakers have finished with their presentations, we will open the floor to a live Q&A session, as well as take in any questions from Facebook or from the Zoom chat. Today's discussion will be started by Mr. Frank Hajdiniak, Vice President of the Romanian Energy Center, who is going to talk to us about the bigger picture, a 360-degree view of the Romanian energy transition. Mr. Hajdiniak, whenever you are ready.
Yes, sure. So good morning, everybody. My name is Frank Hajdiniak. I'm since 2005 in Romania. Since 1994, I'm working in the energy sector. First years in Germany, and after that in Slovakia and some other countries. And since 2005, as I said, I'm in Romania. I was for almost 15 years the CEO of E.ON in Romania. And I'm now Vice President of CRE, the Romanian Energy Center, and also CEO of E+ Romania, so E+ Smart Energy, which is a service provider in the Romanian energy sector with around about 600 employees. Well, sustainability and the big picture. If you look about what happened over the last years, this topic it seemed as if it got a second-rank priority with all the different topics which came up, starting with the pandemic, continuing with the war, and connected to both events, also the energy crisis, which has also a very strong connection, which was said, which Neil said actually earlier about affordability of energy. And but I'm very, very sure that this topic will, if it's not already, a top #1 priority for all the companies, not only in the energy sector, in order to overcome this crisis and to find new ways for the energy provision and energy usage especially. Now, what does sustainability mean? It means some aspects only. How do we run our business? That means how does the company itself contribute to sustainable development of our society and the energy usage? And it covers aspects which are related to the environment, of course. So, and here questions have to be asked: how does a company reach carbon zero, carbon neutrality? And I think what we will see actually is that this topic will become a major topic for many companies, because clients will ask more and more for a sustainable and environmental policy for companies, and also investors. I don't have to tell you, for example, Katalin, as you're in charge of sustainable funding, the funding possibilities are actually limited if you're not on a very good sustainable track. And that does impact the things. How does your company, or which products also does your company offer? And how do the products the company offer contribute to a sustainable development in the future? If you look at the energy sector, it covers actually all parts of the whole value chain. There's a lot of discussion, of course, going on about the generation part. That means, for example, renewable generation, wind, solar, biomass, hydro. And also on the gas side, how to replace it, for example, in the future, also with hydrogen products, or products which are involving hydrogen generation, or the possibilities which might come in the future with hydrogen. We should not forget that this is still, let's say, in the R&D phase, even if we have some first implementations of it. But it does not only affect the generation part, because with it comes also a very, very strong impact on the next parts of the value chain, which means transport and distribution, because we will not be able to integrate, talking especially about Romania, but it affects also other countries. But in Romania, the situation is especially like this, that the integration of renewable generation sources will have huge impacts also on the design and also the structure of our transportation and distribution networks for electricity especially. And there are huge investment needs. This includes also much more accelerated digitization of the grids, again, both for distribution and transport. Otherwise, the integration will not be feasible. The grid will need to be strengthened. If you look at the current renewable setup, a lot is concentrating in the southeastern part actually of Romania, where we had many installations in 2009, 2014. In this boom period for renewables. And there are lots of new projects already under discussion. There are also incredible, very, very huge funding possibilities available, with the different possibilities which are set up, like Modernization Fund, the National Plan for Recovery and Resilience, etc. So it is not just a regeneration issue. What we actually need here is really to look at the big picture. What does it mean for the whole design of the Romanian energy system in order to become more independent, especially also from Russian gas or Russian oil in the future? And this will affect the whole value chain, and it also affects the service sector very much. where we are not only talking, but also, of course, about investments in maintenance or works for investment in maintenance, but also smart technologies, which starts with SCADA, asset management tools, and continues with IoT applications in order to reduce the possibilities for or reduce the energy usage, because any kilowatt hour which is not used is still the best one. So therefore, short term especially, reduction of energy usage can be supported by these developments. And it also affects the client side. You see more and more decentralizations happening now with the huge energy crisis or prices which we see, and I don't see any tendency that they will go down over the next years. There is an increasing pressure also on the client sides, business customers and household customers, to reduce consumption. That can be done with different kinds of energy efficiency measures, which will allow to reduce the consumption for both gas and electricity in the future. And again, this will have a tremendous impact also on the grid structure and how we have to run and develop our grids for the future. So I was only covering one aspect now of the sustainability. Of course, it also is, we're talking about the social aspect, our responsibility towards our employees, our other stakeholders like shareholders, trade unions, and the society in general. And also, how do we run our acquisitions for products of the company? Where do we source? How do we source? How do we allow for diversity in the companies? And of course, governance is an important aspect which we have to consider here, which means increasing transparency towards all stakeholders, starting from shareholders, but again, also the society. Again, diversity is a topic which is very important here. And things like independency of board structures between executive and non-executive functions. So there's a huge number of topics which have to be covered and which will become more and more part of the main focus of companies to offer attractive workplaces, to offer sustainable development of the company, and with that to allow for a sustainable development of the company actually, and also to open up new funding possibilities for the future growth and investment possibilities of the company. So it is a major topic for, and should be a major topic for all companies, not only in the energy sector, in order to increase the efforts for sustainability in the future. And it will actually be mandatory from my point of view, not only to, as I mentioned several times, to attract additional funding opportunities, but also in order to provide, to prepare our society, the environment we're living in for future, also for our kids, in order to allow that the climate change can be controlled, hopefully. And therefore, it will be an effort which goes along all the sectors, which goes along all the value chain, and includes, of course, also our clients, both on the B2C and in the B2B sector. That's what I wanted to say as some opening remarks, and I'm very open for any question regarding this topic.
Thank you very much, Frank, for the insightful talk on energy trends. I myself have written down two questions, especially for you, which I will address at the end of today's discussion. Moving forward, I think we can continue with Miss Alina Chismash, Sustainable Development Manager at Ursus Breweries.
Hello.
Alina, you have the floor.
Hello. First of all, I have some slides, just 2-3 slides that I want to share. So I will share my screen. Okay. it seems I'm not allowed to. Just, is it something that you need to do first, or because it's not?
I think one of the colleagues organizing this this call should be able to
Yes,
assist
because
you.
in my case the share button it's blurred, so not available. Let me see if I can. Merge pe data. No.
I think this is an example of how technology can prove to be unsustainable, because just-in-time delivery is generally what we want in order to avoid building stock and having waste. So if we are unsuccessful, Alina, and you feel comfortable without the slides, I think
Okay,
like that
I
as
will
well.
anyway share it to your colleague Ioana, and if she can, she will then share it, and if not, I will just talk about it. Okay, so I am here representing Ursus Breweries. Ursus is the largest beer producer in Romania, and the ambition of the company is to is that starting from the point that this decade it's essential. Most of company targets are related to 2030, and we see this horizon as a point where our breweries should be carbon neutral, so our business would be carbon neutral, and we could also impact on our Scope 3 emissions, meaning that our suppliers and the distribution, we could also impact in terms of 30% reduction of Scope 3 emissions. And our main goal is to be carbon neutral in full in all Scope 1 to 3 by 2050. Among all these, we have also other ambitions that all put together represent our, let's say, sustainability roadmap. And by this we mean, because, okay, beer, in very short, beer is made of water and cereals. And the main concern in our business, it's one thing, water, because this is what we put in our beer, water. And here we aim to reach, to decrease the consumption of water we need to brew our beer from what it is today to 2.75 liters per each liter of beer. And among the industry, this is a very good performance, and it's not reached today yet. And in terms of cereals, the other ingredient in our beer, we aim to have it by 2030, all the ingredients should be sourced sustainably. And coming from these two together, we have now the objective of brewing this together in, let's say, with carbon neutrality, so without producing any damage to the environment by 2030. And I will tackle this because this is, let's say, our main and most challenging topic, and I will tackle it separately. And also we have the challenge of circular packaging. We are not today where we would like to be. And this is not only company effort, it's also authorities and stakeholders, other stakeholders involved. But we aim that by 2030, all our packaging will be reusable or fully recyclable. And there are two other areas that are extremely relevant in the company that are, let's say, more related to people, not with the product. And this is inclusion and well-being. And what we aimed and we already achieved in Romania, let's say that we are lucky here to have this already in place. It's equal share of women and men in leadership by 2030. So we already have it in Romania today. And also responsible choices. And for this, because, okay, we produce alcohol, but we encourage responsible consumption. And for this, 20% of our portfolio will be non-alcoholic beer by 2030. So this is the main 6 pillars that we have. And from this, I will open in detail a little bit more in detail the part with carbon neutrality. For people here in this call, maybe you are familiar with scope 1, 2, 3. If not, I will just comment in short. Scope 1 are the emissions from the main activity of the company. In our case, we produce beer in 3 breweries, so 3 factories that we call breweries. And these emissions that are directly related with beer production is scope 1. Scope 2 is the emissions from energy and utilities, because we use, for instance, electric energy, but it was not produced in our site. Somewhere else, some emissions have been released to the atmosphere. So we are also accountable for this emission, and these are called scope 2. And scope 3, it's everything that is upstream and downstream our business. So upstream meaning producing the cereals that we need to use to brew our beer, and let's say the packaging, the bottles that we need to use to fill it with beer in the brewery. And downstream would be, we need to transport this beer to our consumers, we need to refrigerate it, and emissions related to all this activity are considered as scope 3. If we can do something about scope 1 and 2, which is in our control, and I will give you an example here. In our breweries, we already moved to fully, so 100% green electricity, starting the beginning of this year, and this was a huge step for us. The remaining part to be green in our production would be to replace the thermal energy we need with to make it green somehow. And we have some directions here, so we are actively working on that. And the biggest challenge, and this is an open discussion with the other panelists, or if there are questions, it's on scope 3, because this is an area where we, let's say, we have limited control. I wouldn't say we can't control it, but the control is limited because it's out of our business, and it's just a matter of engaging with the external stakeholders to support them where possible to move towards greener sources of energy, mainly. So let's say that this is our roadmap. This is how we approach it. And if there are questions related to that, I'm open to now, or maybe in the end, how you prefer.
Thank you very much, Alina. I think we will all take questions at the end. I have quite a few for you as well. At least one of them related to scope 3 emissions, because that one gives everybody a headache. So thank you, and please ready an answer for this one 10 minutes down the road.
Thank you.
Moving forward to our last speaker, we have Alina Vasile-Floroaie, Sustainability Strategist and Managing Director at Dare Strategy, who is going to talk to us about what it means to build a resilient organization. Alina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cătălin. Good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here with you. My name is Alina Vasile-Floroaie. I'm a Romanian British, having lived in London until recently when we relocated to Romania. I have an international career, having worked abroad, the US, Sweden, Belgium, and the UK for more than 16 years. I'm a political scientist by training, and I have a bachelor and master in European politics, but I transitioned to management consulting after graduating with an MBA from Vlerick University in Belgium. And I run a boutique advisory with a focus on sustainable strategy and business models and renewable energy projects. And we are currently setting up office in Romania. And thank you very much, Alina and Frank, for the great overview of the energy outlook in Romania, as well as for the insights into Ursus Brewery's sustainability journey and transformation. It is a great example of a forward-thinking company. Which brings me to the topic of my intervention today, where I'd like to pick up from what my fellow panelists have said and reinforce how organizations can engage on this transformation path and why sustainability is the smart, if not the only strategy going forward. And I'll use these very recognizable questions from the journalistic industry, from the journalism, where we start always with the why, the what, the how, the who, and the when. And this should make it very easy to understand why businesses need to act now, what they can do to become sustainable or more sustainable. And now we talk about regenerative businesses, actually. How can you achieve that, and who should be involved in this transformative journey, and when should this happen? I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the why, because my fellow panelists, they have already talked about it a little bit. And as Alina was saying, I think the audience of this event is already aware of the major challenges. But the gist is that businesses need to act because of the size of the challenges and the variety of risks that we face, which are greater than ever before. And as you probably know, not just 4, but now recently 5 planetary boundaries have been transgressed, water being the latest one added to the list. And there's a lot of system pressures on the Earth's resources. So our choices as business leaders, policymakers, and individuals, they matter now more than ever. And the actions we take in the next 10 years will determine whether our life support systems, they break down or they break through. And as Frank was saying, Russia's invasion of Ukraine is the latest in the long line of moments in time that only reinforces this need to stay on track in tackling sustainability. And there are global risks that we all are aware of, the environmental ones, the social one, and economic ones. And all these, they create numerous business risks. Because despite the fact that companies operate today in an age of unprecedented opportunity, we have access to the global markets like never before, and we have built sophisticated supply chains. These are very interconnected, and this means we're dependent on one another. We're dependent on finite raw materials. We rely on IC technology, and that brings operational risks, price volatility, problems with productivity or employee engagement, and all the rest of brand reputation, which means that we need to reassess business models and business propositions. And of course, there's a lot of regulatory compliance that it's coming up. But we don't have to talk only about the risks and challenges. We also can talk about the opportunities, and we should, because sustainability is the one that can drive your business forward. And there are commercial, there are investments, Frank already mentioned that, but organizations that focus on sustainable strategy, they will be more resilient, and they will be the ones that will create synergies and positive feedback loops. Because there are a lot of business opportunities that this crisis will bring about, from energy efficiency to rethinking the business models. There will be a lot of low carbon goods and services in the energy sector, in the transport sector, the renewables energy sector. The fleets are gonna have to change. We'll have to reformulate existing products, from fertilizers in agriculture. We will move to smart agriculture. So opportunities are already there. And if we have discussed the why, what can businesses do to become more resilient and to thrive in this new context. And we have been, for the past, lately, the past 2 years, it's been more prominent, but for at least a decade, we have been talking about purpose in business, not just profit. And it is about having something to believe in. It's a powerful force that can get you through anything. So businesses, they will have an important role to play to bring solutions to the world's biggest problem. And this, of course, has to start with having a sustainable business strategy, which is all about redefining purpose. You have to look at the sustainable development goals, and you can redefine your strategy through these strategic goals. And you need to embed sustainability data in your processes and networks. You need to rethink the patterns. You need to rethink how you have done things until now and decide where change needs to happen. You need to manage carbon, climate exposure, reassess performance through new metrics possibly, but also prioritize people across the value chain. Frank already mentioned how important people are in organizations. We have to realign partners through stakeholder engagement, and circularity and regenerative are all about innovating portfolios and redesigning portfolios that businesses have. And all of this will only lead to embarking on a journey of transformation. So the thriving organizations, they're different from the other ones because, first of all, they are very ambitious. And they focus on these elements of restoration of ecosystems. They focus on renewal of resources. And we talk here about circular business models because, we're basically throwing away 90% of the things we extract and consume because the circular economy only deals with 10% at the moment. And these thriving organizations, they're responsible. They focus on diversity and inclusion, not just within their organization, but also in society at large. And also on the well-being economy, talking about mental health lately within organizations, but also at individual level. And also resilient companies, they are using technology as a solution for social and environmental challenges. I was mentioning smart agriculture, AI, machine learning, and technology should not be part of the problem. Digital economy is there to give a competitive advantage. Though, of course, with automation, we can talk about the need to reskill and adapt for our workforce. But companies have a wide range of opportunities to shape a future that is livable, equitable, and environmentally secure. And how can we do that? How does a company engage on this path? Besides understanding the urgency, deciding to take a strategic stand on it, the how seems always the most daunting part of it. And I am glad to see, for example, that Ursus breweries has taken, because I've read the sustainability report, and they're covering a lot of ground. It's a very exciting moment, I think, in Ursus breweries' journey, because they already understand and they start looking at things that most companies, they only, they do bits by bits. How do we get there? First of all, you need to measure. You need to measure your impact. You need to measure your footprint to understand how your company impacts environment, society, and how your governance is done. You can use this knowledge then to adapt your operations, to plan for long-term change, and also innovate. You need to adjust your strategic direction, but unless you measure and understand, you will not be able to do that. That's where you will need to adapt your business model to include all these new decisions. But of course, you can't do this without the people. People need to understand the urgency. Your workforce needs to be climate aware. They need to have the skills to implement all these changes. And obviously, communication is key. Frank mentioned earlier as well that you need to be transparent. You need to be clear and honest when you communicate with employees and customers and investors. There's a whole range of stakeholders you need to address. And collaboration obviously is crucial for innovation and moving things forward. And when we talk about measuring impact and strategic direction, of course, the field becomes a bit of sustainability becomes a bit scary. I will just briefly show you this image to give you just an understanding of what ESG truly means. These are short-term, medium-term, long-term topics from a general ESG perspective. So a company, to be truly sustainable, would need to go into a lot of detail and address most of these elements. That's why I'm saying this is a step-by-step approach. And Catalina, I don't know if you allow me, I would just go a little bit into detail about the sustainability reporting landscape, just because there has been a lot of progress at the EU level, and regulatory pressures are increasing for companies. They need to get ready for change. And also disclosing would also need to be able to substantiate all those claims. It's not just a report. You need to make sure that what you claim in the report will actually happen or will happen. In the UK, in the EU, and even in the United States, companies might choose to use one of these frameworks to either disclose or to draft their sustainability strategy. As you can see, it's a very busy, noisy landscape. There's a lot of logos you might recognize, but also makes it very difficult for companies to know where to start. So I guess in terms of goals and principles, which will sort of help you choose a strategic direction, most companies start from the Sustainable Development Goals. There are other frameworks as well, like the UN Global Compact. And in terms of reporting frameworks, which are the basis to help you draft the sustainability report, there's again a big choice from the GRIs, which is probably the most used one at the moment. There's CDP, there's SBTI, there's also a B Corp impact assessment lately. There are ESG ratings and indices, and these are used mostly by investment companies or asset management companies, and I think Catalin knows very well what that means. There's a lot of artificial intelligence in that. There's a lot of software and technology going into ESG ratings and indices, which basically they pick up information from sustainability reports, and they kind of transform that into metrics that investors use to decide what companies to finance. And finally, we have regulation. There's a regulation, well, there are sort of standards at international level. Well, I'm not going to go into detail about that because we will need half a day. But at the EU level, there's been an increase, if you want, in regulation with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. There's the mandatory climate risk reporting, the taxonomy regulation in terms of financial, and most recently there has been put forward the Circular Economy Action Plan. There are synergies, of course, between the European regulation and the international standards. One of the biggest challenges is the fact that there are so many that for companies or organizations it's sometimes very difficult to grasp the differences. In terms of ESG trends, obviously the demand for ESG is on the rise. And there are, I think, a lot of asset managers, they are developing sort of internal in-house metrics to complement the traditional ones. But it's very difficult to standardize any ESG disclosure. So it will probably be a use of a system of different indices. And of course, what investors will look at as much as consumers will be how you align your data with the purpose and the strategy. And most likely the S dimension will become as important as the climate change dimension. And of course, we need to take into account how future focused they are, because until now we have been focusing on the risks historically, but now we have to focus on future trends. I will go really quickly through the rest of the sort of the strategy that companies have to implement sustainability. So we stopped at measuring. Obviously, we need to understand that, and for that we need to develop capacity. We need to change and innovate, and here I think the easiest is to start with looking at water, energy consumption, raw materials, measuring your carbon footprint, and obviously you have to go into circularity objectives, packaging recyclability. Collaboration is key. You need to look for partners to innovate, because cost is always one of the issues for companies. By innovating in partnership, things can change. And obviously, we need a new breed, if you want, of leadership. We need to have more courageous, more strategic, innovative, but also empathic and inclusive leaders. It's long gone the era of the charismatic leader. We need to have empowering leaders and caring leaders. And we absolutely need to act now. We need to also focus on biodiversity and nature-based solutions. Resilient companies, they have a few elements in common. They are diverse because we invest in people, but also because investments are done in different areas. There's less likely to be a crisis. Decentralization is very important. And I know in terms of energy, we talk a lot about it, but also we should talk about it in terms of food systems, not just microgrids. Not just grids, but microgrids. And also just in time, because we've been talking about just in time a couple of minutes ago, we need to have slack in the system, redundancy. We need to have breaks as people, as organizations, because we cannot function just in time all the time. And purpose is obviously the focus of sustainability and regeneration and community and solidarity. If we're not doing it for our community, what are we doing it for? We want all to be the good ancestor. I think spending time in nature, it will be very good for not just our companies, but also for our mental health to understand. I think I took a bit more, but there was so much ground that I really wanted to cover. And I think if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you so much, Alina. I mean, sustainability and ESG in particular, because it's also something I do, is a topic that could keep us engaged for at least a few days. Unfortunately, our audience, I don't think have that much time. But thank you everyone for all your insightful presentations. And I think we can dive into some of the questions. I already took the liberty of asking one that was posed here in the chat, but it's also open to all of you. And the question is it fair to consider that Romania shouldn't be too affected by the current increase in gas prices, given that the country is not so dependent on Russian gas? My take on this question, as I've provided a written answer, is that regardless of our natural resources, we're part of this global market, and we cannot dictate prices by ourselves. With the infrastructure problems that we have set aside, even providing with our own nationals with subsidies, I think we are still some time away from actually seeing an impact in our pockets. But please, especially Frank, I think you might have more of an insight here than myself.
Yes, I think your position is right. We might see a slight decrease in the pricing situation over the next month, but that depends very, very much on the overall development. Our resources are currently not sufficient. The alternatives we have to Russian gas, which can be developed over the next years, like, for example, importing LNG gas, will not be cheap. The transport capacities, for example, are very limited, and the pricing is very high. So even if we find alternative routes, we should not expect for our gas sourcing, we should not expect that the prices will decline very, very much. I would not see this in the upcoming future. And also, we have a chance with the Black Sea gas. I hope that now finally we get an offshore law which is acceptable for all stakeholders involved, also for the producers, so that we can move forward here. That will definitely increase the independency of Romania, but that will take 4 to 5 years starting from now. So over the next years, I don't see any chances for a significant decrease in prices unless there's a really completely development happening in Russia and a complete turnaround of the situation. But that would be speculating. Otherwise, I would fully sign off to what you wrote. And the same is true for electricity, by the way. We will not see the prices we had in electricity some years ago. These days are gone. Over the next foreseeable future, I don't see the electricity prices in Romania to decline. And with the coupled markets, we have basically an international price here. So I really see no chance for any improvement on the pricing side here short term. On the contrary, that's another huge pressure, which will, let's say, from this point of view, positive pressure to increase energy efficiency and renewable production over the next years.
Thank you very much, Frank, for your answer. We have another question that was written here in the chat. It's directed to Ms. Chismash. Does Ursus get involved in educational initiatives to raise awareness among students regarding sustainability?
Yes, Ursus gets involved in, but not especially in the sustainability education for the moment. We get involved with the students, supporting with scholarship, especially in the areas where we are related to our business. In the cities where we have the breweries, for instance, in University of Timișoara, also in ASE, Bucharest, the economical studies. And in terms of sustainability education, let's say that we are in a phase that we develop this for our employees. So we want to have our people first understanding all the stakes of climate change. So this is what we do in-house. And we are also in a phase of developing this for our customers. In terms of education, we do some things, but it's not generally sustainability. It's more social responsibility related. We do educational programs for parents to prevent, let's say, unhealthy consumption of alcohol, both in parents, and to prevent alcohol consumption in young people, in children and young, because we have this issue in Romania and we need to address it as market leaders. So we invest in this. We cannot invest in educating minors, the children, but we invest in working with educational bodies and parents to prevent things to happen.
Thank you, Alina. I hope. I think that's a good answer to the question. I think education is fundamental to any change that we want to achieve, both at individual level, but also at societal level. Since I have you here, I had another question, which I think would be more properly addressed by you, since it's a topic that affects producers. It's the SGR, Sistemul de Garanție Returnare, which is on every producer's lips and minds. I think it will come into force sometime next year, if I am not
hopefully
wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, and I myself was curious if you can provide some insights on what Ursus is doing to implement this, and yeah, maybe others can pick up some lessons on it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity, because you know, we are as a company very proud to the path that to the journey that we have until now. Basically, what we did was to support and the preparation of this program, and within Brewers Association and together with soft drinks producers. We supported all this legislation being in place, and also put the basis for the company that will manage this system, that's return warranty return system. Yes, as you mentioned, the plan is to be in place end 2023, and let's say that we are on track in this. we see a lot of challenges. First, because we don't have, let's say, yet the stakeholders in place to to receive all this packaging and to transform it, to recycle it, to use it. And okay, in our case, we are more than open to go for 100% of our packaging done with recycled content. But for this to happen, we need an entire value chain to be in place, to have recycling companies able to produce, to sort or to produce a high quality, because we are in food industry, so we need to pay a lot of attention to the quality of the recycled content we put in our bottles. And we also need to work a lot in educating the end consumer, because just having DRS in place, the return guaranteed return, the deposit return system will not solve the problem.
Of course.
Because the deposit, it's really 50 bani, it's very low. So we also have to, in parallel, we need to educate the consumer, because if we don't have this packaging back and the system is not working at the full capacity, then we will be able to say that we have a victory. Until then, we will need a lot of education in place for the consumers.
Yeah, thank you very much for your answer, Alina. I asked it especially because I wanted to hear your perspective, because I've been talking with other stakeholders who have been working on this topic. And indeed, the major problem is not the actual warranty that you pay for the packaging and you get it back when you return it, but it's the downstream that starts from there. Who processes it, how they process it, and where does it go from there. I'm optimistic that some of the big players, and including government, will see this as an opportunity and not as a cost, and get together and actually build an adequate system. So thank you again for that answer. I have one.
Thank you for opening the topic.
It's an important one. I have another couple of questions which are open to anyone. These are quite broad. But Frank talked a bit about green energy and, of course, the imperative that we have more of it in Romania. What do you think that the biggest challenges in particular for green energy are? Getting finance, getting the infrastructure to move it around. What are the biggest roadblocks that you've come across in your experiences, in your collective experiences, of course?
Well, if I can start on this topic, financing, I think it's not any longer the biggest blocker. There are really huge funding possibilities available, but also because of the development of the sourcing prices for electricity and gas, the business cases look totally different than 4 or 5 years ago, as the price was, especially in Romania, was always subsidized at the end of the day, and it was below market price due to regulations which were in place. This pressure for the companies and for the household did not exist to do a lot there. So it then depended, there was no cost pressure. And the sustainability discussion in Romania, let's say it's still immature in comparison to other countries, but it's growing now, fortunately, with international companies being present, but also with the Romanian companies. There is, let's say, a huge financial incentive, not only coming from financing, but also because of the price development. But what we will see is that our grids need major investment and major modernization in order to cope with that. And that is basic technology, but that's a lot of digitization which will be needed here. There are new business models and new steering of the grid available. We are seeing a further decentralization of generation with renewables coming in, being it behind the meter or in front of the meter, meaning directly connected in the household and then to the meter, or as one example, or connected to the transportation or distribution grid. And this will require substantial investments in the grid. And this has to be seen also by the policymakers, because we need for this a proper energy strategy where we really talk about the development of the grid as one pillar, which is absolutely mandatory in order to make this happen, to make this possible. That's my point of view. So I see the biggest bottleneck right now in the grid, and the lack of investments in these areas, which is in the current situation even getting worse because of different problems which do exist in the sector and which need to be addressed by the policymakers without any polemics or political agendas. It is a major development block for Romania and which needs to be addressed.
Thank you for that answer, Frank. So my takeaway is that the grid is a big issue.
I could continue Frank's topic, and I can confirm that it's really a topic. And in our case, I have a specific example that we considered moving from thermal to electric energy for one of our breweries to, let's say, get faster in our road to carbon neutral breweries, but it was not enough available installed power for that, and not available in the next years. So yeah, this limits a lot in terms of switching to green energy.
Definitely, I think this discussion shows us the importance of looking at our economic system holistically and actually identifying that we're not separate industries, but that we're in a domino and we're each connected. When one piece falls, the others get affected, and the sooner we wake up to this reality, the better for all of us.
And if I can add,
Katalin, please,
sorry,
please,
I just wanted to add that, until recently, although the PPAs, they came into regulation already a couple of years ago, there hasn't actually, been a lot of them. We only now start to see some shape or form of PPAs, which in a way kind of hindered investments as well. So like everyone agrees, it's a combination of factors, and definitely the power of the grid is the one that needs to be tackled. And it's not just in Romania, it's worldwide. If you go to the United States, they have exactly the same problem, because of course we like to talk about ambitious targets and we all work to electrify everything. We all want to switch to electric cars, but the grid is not ready. It's not ready in Romania, it's not ready at the European level, it's not ready at the US level. So we do need to invest a lot in this infrastructure. And then there's also the circularity aspects of, the blades of the windmills, the recyclability of the solar panels. So there are a lot of issues when we talk about energy efficiency and renewable energy.
Thank you, Alina. We're approaching the end of our discussion today, but if everyone can bear for another 2 minutes, I think one final question, which I had especially for you, Alina, because you raised the topic of ESG and the sustainability landscape. Since a lot of companies, big and small alike, look at the sustainability landscape and think, where do I start? I think the most important aspect is for companies to identify what is most material for them. So they need a materiality assessment. How do you think that should look like? Where should corporates start in identifying the most material issues for them?
It's not just corporates. I think, because sometimes we tend to dissociate and make a distinction between corporates, because the regulation will mostly apply to them, like what's coming on the European level would mostly apply to the very big companies. But there's also this very big sector of SMEs that will need to transition to the sustainability strategy. And they all have to do sort of a materiality assessment. And of course, there's GRI, and the new European legislation as well, they show you where to start and how to do it. And it obviously involves dialogue, it involves collaboration. And as Alina was saying, this is always very challenging to engage with stakeholders because there are so many. So I think it's when you talk about ESG, you have to go first at the purpose of your company. You don't even need a very big framework to start with. You just start with the basic questions. And from there, you can build on, because corporations are very complex. And I think the problem so far has been that even sustainability is done in silos. Sustainability cannot be done in silos. It's a system. So departments, they have to cooperate with each other. They cannot just have a sustainability report for each department. We have to do this as a whole. Because we're going back to the complex system theory. It's all about synergies and convergence. And we have to know how to manage that. So there is no clear or a specific answer how you start a materiality assessment. There are obviously lots of frameworks companies can choose from, but what my message would be that it's not just for corporates. SMEs can also embark on this journey because, as Alina was saying, scope 3 is mostly about SMEs because they are at some point suppliers in this big value chain. Yeah. So we have all to embark on this journey.
Thank you very much, Alina. My takeaway from this would be that we need to roll up our sleeves and talk more about what we can do and just start doing it without waiting for legislation or doing it for compliance purposes. Proactivity is the way to go and is an integral part of what sustainability means. Okay, since we are running over time, I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone for today's webinar. Very insightful presentations. I hope we can keep this discussion going. I like to thank the BRCC for putting these webinars together. And I would also like to end the discussion with 2 book recommendations that I've read in the past year, and I think everyone here would benefit. And these are Bill Gates's How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, which is a very well put together summary of the biggest contributors to climate change and some practical solutions and how they can be implemented. And because I remembered from Alina's presentation where I saw the graph with the Earth system boundaries, another great lecture is that from Kate Raworth. It's called Donut Economics, which talks exactly about Earth system limits, pressures, and trends. With that being said, thank you again to everyone. Wishing you a great day, a great week. And let's put our heads and shoulders together and contribute to building a more sustainable future.
Catalin, thank you very much on behalf of the Chamber for your excellent moderation of today. And thank you, Alina, Frank, and Alina for your contributions. It's been a really impressive webinar. We've had a good audience here and on Facebook. And thank you all for taking part. Thank you to my colleagues in the Chamber who set this up. And a quick reminder that our next webinar will be on the 12th of this month. I'm putting in the chat the web link to the, let me put it in everyone, just a moment. The web link is here, which is about closing, fiscal aspects of closing the year end. Obviously an important thing for everyone doing business in Romania. So thank you all very much. Have a good day. Climate change, sustainability is not just a matter of discussion, it's good business. Let's keep doing it. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.